Hello everyone, it's Anna here. I'm so glad you could join me for yet another delicious bake along. I'm making my fluffy, cheesy cheddar chive biscuits. These biscuits are a snap to whip up and perfect if you want to serve them, say, with a soup, a stew, a chili, or of course just enjoy them on their own. I've already got my flour measured in my bowl, and you know that the full recipe is right beneath this window. If you click on the More button, whoop, it opens up to the full recipe, all the measurements, all the instructions. I'm going to combine all my dry ingredients. So to the flour, I'm going to add just a touch of sugar. It doesn't really lend a lot of sweetness, but it does dissolve into the biscuit dough, helping give it a nice bit of moisture and round out the flavors a touch. I've got a fair bit of baking powder here. Let me get all of it in there, but just half a teaspoon of baking soda. This will react with my buttermilk once I add it, and that really contributes to the fluffiness of the biscuits. A touch of salt, and I'm bringing the dough together. Well, I'm actually cutting the butter in using a pastry blender. If you want, you could use a food processor, but even 2 butter knives is easy enough to do, because instead of dicing the butter and adding it to the flour, I'm going to use the large hole side of a box grater, and you want to pull your butter right from the fridge. That way you grate it like cheese right into the flour. This just takes minutes off of the blending time. And it looks a bit like cheese as it's going in. If you happen to live in a warm climate, or it happens to be a hot, humid day, you could always pop the butter into the freezer for 5-10 minutes while you're getting your other ingredients ready. That way it won't get too soft once you get to this final little piece at the end. Because of course the warmth of your hand can warm it up a touch too. Make sure there's no butter hanging out on the inside. And now, using my pastry blender, I'm just breaking down these pieces. They're already nicely small, and as I continue to stir and bring the dough together, they'll break down further. So this is not quite like making a pie dough where you have to work in the butter to a particular level of sort of blendedness. Is that a word? You know what I mean. You don't really have to work in the butter too much. Just making sure it's all evenly broken down, coated with the flour. And now I can add the cheddar cheese, 2 full cups, 180 grams. I like to use a stronger cheddar, like an old cheddar. Any sort of firmer cheese would work, like an Asiago, a provolone would work very nicely in this recipe. And I do love the mild oniony kick of the chives, but if you have green onions instead, that works just fine. If you've watched my bake-alongs before, you know I want to give you options so you feel you have some flexibility. I think a lot of people presume, well, baking is so formulaic, it's so linear, there's no room for variance. Well, if you've baked with me long enough, you know there's lots of room for creative expression, switching out ingredients, adapting a recipe to make it your own. All right, so now the last ingredient to add, my buttermilk. Now the buttermilk has acidity worked into it. Originally, buttermilk was the byproduct of the butter making process. Now they manufacture it for just being buttermilk itself. It does have acidity to it. It is low in fat, usually about 1% butter fat or milk fat. If you don't have access to buttermilk, what you need to do is essentially replace that acidity. So you can measure out just regular milk, pull out a tablespoon, maybe 4 teaspoons for this measurement of buttermilk, and replace that with either fresh lemon juice or white vinegar, a neutral vinegar. And then you get that same reaction when you add it to the baking soda, that little bit of baking soda that's in here. Now you may find as you're mixing this, it feels like a slightly denser dough. It's softer than a scone dough, but I'm not looking to build flakiness. When I make a scone, I like to turn it out on my work surface and finish incorporating it by hand so I can build in some layers. Biscuits, and especially with all this cheese, you don't have to worry about that. So just keep at it until the dough comes together, until you no longer see. Here you can still spy some bits of flour. I just want to make sure that's all worked into the dough so it's an even consistency. I'm almost there. I'm tempted to go in with my hands, but I want to make sure I don't warm up this dough. All my ingredients are cold. The butter, the buttermilk. There we go. Okay, all that flour has now been incorporated, and it's just time to portion out the biscuits now. I've got 2 baking trays. This recipe makes between 18 and 20 biscuits, depending how you want to scoop them. I like using a mechanical scoop. You could use 2 spoons if you wish. If you wanted to, you could roll out the biscuits and use a cutter, but you'll want to flour your work surface generously. I'm using a number 20 scoop, which is a rather large scoop. And did you know where the numbering system comes from? The number on your scoop refers to the number of scoops per quart. Now, it's a very important distinction. This is an imperial quart, so in milliliters, that's 946 milliliters. And so the smaller the number on your scoop, the bigger the volume it holds. So I'll scoop my biscuits onto the tray. I can feel the dough is lightening up. It's actually fluffing up in the bowl because of the reaction between the buttermilk and that little bit of baking soda. The baking powder kind of works all on its own. It's already got the acidity factored into it, and as well, it reacts to the heat of the oven, which is why these are going to puff up even more when I pop them in the oven. When I'm scooping biscuits, I don't worry about them being perfectly round shaped. If they've got little pieces sticking out, you know those are going to toast up. And that sort of toasted cheese crispiness on the outside, well, it just makes the biscuit better. There we go. I did get 20. Look at that. The finishing touch to these biscuits is just a little brush with an egg wash. And whole egg whisked with a little water. This just adds shine. I've already preheated my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 Celsius, and these take between 18 and 20 minutes to bake. Easy to remember. Makes 18 to 20, takes 18 to 20. Like scones and other styles of biscuits, these are always best on the day they're baked. What you can do is bake a full batch, and if you don't need 18 to 20 biscuits, they reheat wonderfully. So then baked, you can pop them in the freezer and then just pull them out and rewarm them in the oven to melt that cheese again, and you're all set. And now I'm all set to put these in the oven And just so I could get ready for you, I moments ago pulled these out of the oven. They're still warm, but not too hot to touch. But you can see that beautiful browning and how they spread a little bit. That really lends to the fluffiness. I do like to serve them warm. So even if I bake them earlier in the day, if I know I'm serving biscuits alongside, well, actually, I seriously have plans to make chili as soon as we're done here. And I'll reheat these to serve these with the chili in a few hours. Oh, yum. Fluffy and light. You can see no crumbs or crumbling. These are nice and moist and tender inside. I know you're gonna love making these cheddar chive biscuits. I look forward to seeing your comments below, how you like this recipe. Please always share with me what interests you in the world of baking, because I take my inspiration from you. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you again for another tasty bake-along. With the chili. Oh yeah. Oh, you could put jalapeno pickle juice. If you're making your own buttermilk, skip the vinegar, use jalapeno pickle juice. Oh, hello. That would be fantastic. Bye.